But I believe it was Isaac Newton who once said, "For every bus bending the arc of the moral universe towards justice, there's another bus coming in the opposite direction, trying really hard to bend that mother back."
Good evening, this is Newsnight for July 8th, 2020. As stated in my last video, this episode will cover yet another issue regarding LGBT rights in America. However, unlike the last video, this one is far from a victory for the LGBT community, but rather serves as another example of both the Trump administration and conservatives in general taking direct action to infringe upon fair and equal treatment of these people once again. All of this serving little to no purpose at all, other than making life all the more harder for a group of the population that already suffers more than most people. Last month, on Friday, June 12, 2020, the Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS, announced they would be rolling back a previous decision from a section of the Affordable Care Act. This section was referred to as Section 1557. Section 1557 was created as a safeguard to prevent discrimination against people accessing health services under the Affordable Care Act. The part that is most relevant reads as follows. Quote, prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability in certain health programs and activities. The interpretation in 2016 had concluded that gender identity could be included, but not sexual orientation. So in retrospect, it would be legal to discriminate against someone for their sexual orientation in relation to health programs involved with the Affordable Care Act. But now, even that ruling is being rolled back even further. The decision by the DHHS referred the definition of sex to simply mean male and female. So now gender identity, including transgenderism, is once again open for discrimination. Now I have done what research I can to find why this is being done. And as far as I have found, there is no publicly available reasoning behind it, so I'm left to speculate.
Well, we're almost all the way there. Let's complete the transition.
That speculation has boiled down to two different conclusions. The first is that the Trump administration overseeing this is openly pushing for anti-transgender practices in healthcare. This would mean, frankly, that the president and his administration are openly pushing for discrimination, and that transgender people, or people with gender identities that go outside of male or female, can be legally discriminated against. This would mean the worst case scenario, that Trump has managed to form an administration built around rolling back legal protections for trans people, all out of nothing more than bigotry, pure and simple. The second theory is that Trump and his administration are doing this to appeal to the anti-LGBT part of the Republican voter base, and to also appeal to Christian healthcare services that want to use religious freedom as an excuse to discriminate against this group. If this is the case, then I'm of the opinion that these Christian healthcare services should be removed from coordination with the Affordable Care Act. I'm also of the belief that anyone in this administration who is appealing to bigots simply for votes is no better than politicians from pre-civil rights who appeal to racist people simply to get votes in elections.
Alright, and?
In my research into this topic, I have also reached out to people I know, including a friend of a friend who is a trans woman. I asked her if I could have her personal take on this subject matter, and I think her words speak volumes about this issue. Her words are as follows. Quote, if a healthcare professional refuses service to someone on the basis of gender or orientation, then regardless of law, that person shouldn't be practicing medicine. Your job is to help people and provide healthcare, and to show such obvious bias is unprofessional and scummy. I frankly could not agree more. I have also reached out to a fellow YouTuber named OreO, whom with over 3,000 subs, is far more relevant than me, so I would recommend checking her out, link in the description. She is also a trans woman who also was willing to give her input as well. Her words also showing the effect of this on the community. Quote, "My opinion is what Trump is doing is completely unfair to trans people who want to go through the process of transitioning with assurance, or trans people who have thought about transitioning medically. It's a complete and utter disgrace." The words of both of these women speak volumes to the effect this is having on people just trying to live their lives as they see fit. Now, whilst I like to end these episodes with some silly news to lighten the mood, I feel some closing thoughts are in order, and for that, we go to our senior correspondent, Mr. McAvoy.
Thank you. Personally, I'm not sure which of these theories mentioned before are true. But I do know this much. This is not the first time the Trump administration has actively taken steps to roll back rights and assistance for transgender people and the LGBT community as a whole. In September of last year, the Department of Health and Human Services canceled a plan to add non-discrimination rules for hospitals accepting LGBT people who were on Medicaid and Medicare. In April of last year, the president's ban on transgender soldiers took effect, the very ban that, of all things, he threatened over Twitter in 2017. Despite that, 3 years prior to that, in 2014, a study found that up to 15,000 trans people were either serving in the military or the reserves, and over 100,000 veterans were also trans. So, we will consider that a thank you for your service, and to hell with you. Or shall we also cover a memo in October of 2017 released from the Department of Justice instructing their attorneys to take the legal position that the federal law did not protect trans people from discrimination. A ruling which, by the way, from the most recent Supreme Court case that I talked about in my last video, has now contradicted. But that aside, overall, this speaks to a much larger issue that I need to address. While in my previous videos, I have said that a decent portion of Trump supporters are good people who want the best for the country, and while I still stand by that statement, this ordeal does speak to a much bigger problem. Many times, Trump supporters will often wonder why people in the LGBT community have such a bitter contempt for the president and his administration. Put simply, everything I have just laid out is why. So, if you are a Trump supporter, please, I beg you, I urge you, to do more research with the sources I have linked below, and do your own research as well in your free time. This administration has taken direct action against equality under the law for trans people and the LGBT community as a whole. And complacency in that very problem is why so many in this community resent the president and his supporters. And they have every right to feel that way. Because sure, perhaps the economy was doing well before the coronavirus, and jobs were going up, but if all it takes for a people within a country to be completely complacent in discrimination is a decent economy and some money, then I ask you, whoever is watching, what does that say about America and humanity as a whole? Again, all I can urge you is to do your own research and try to be open to changing your mind and hearing what I am saying to you and what these trans women who I asked for an input on were saying. That is all I can simply ask of you, and I hope you take my advice. So thank you for listening, and good night.